What is up, Derek? 13 Series Engineering here, coming to you with a video that is long overdue. We haven't made any videos in like 6 months. I've been super busy, but on Friday I had a shoulder surgery, so I'm gonna have a lot of downtime here to make videos. And something I've been wanting to go over, and it's basically like the kind of the items of what makes like a good Symfony app, particularly a good backend app. So we're gonna make an API. We're gonna follow the regular Symfony pattern in the docs. A lot of people don't do this. It's crazy how many projects I've worked on that are Symfony APIs that they just don't follow the pattern, and it's just crazy. You just got to follow what's in the docs. But we are going to make one small change, and that's going to have to do with the repository pattern that Symfony uses. We are going to adapt Symfony to use CQRS, and it's going to be a series of videos. It's going to be kind of basic, but with Symfony's new DTO in Symfony 6.3, there's a really cool, really easy way to use CQRS instead of just the traditional CRUD REST pattern. And if you're not familiar with those two different patterns, I wouldn't say that Symfony is like forcing you to use CRUD, but in some ways it kind of is with Doctrine. And with CRUD, that's your create, update, delete. Um, you know, Basically how a REST API is like functioning. Um, you know, it's forcing you when you go to update an entity, it's forcing you to query it from the database, update it in memory, and then save it to the database, which of course that's not very efficient as you scale. And Doctrine has some things to like help out with that, cache things to make things kind of, warm up the queries, so things don't go super slow. But instead of doing that, we can use CQRS, which is, and I'm going to take you through all this stuff, but we're going to basically, get and list and post are all going to be normal, but updating entities and deleting entities, we're not going to need to query them. We're just going to run database operations. And if you're not familiar with what CQRS is, I think a lot of the stuff that you look up on the internet, it kind of shows this, that you have like a reader, writer instance, not instance, but you have read and write databases that sync with each other. And that's not, yeah, a lot of people do that and you can do that, but I think, more typically you share a database in CQRS. And what CQRS means is a command query responsibility segregation or command query separation. But essentially it means that the data that you're querying, for us, that's going to be a Doctrine entity. That's going to be different than the data that you're, inserting and updating. So, it allows us to separate and have different entities for the same table that we're going to insert and update. With Symfony DTO, though, we don't need to make a new entity. We can just, there's a typed, class that we're going to make with all that. But yeah, this is just like a more efficient way to reduce those queries. You don't have to query the object to update it. You just update it and that's it. Typically in CQRS, when you do a patch, you get a 204 back, and you don't get the entity back at all. It's like a save and exit type of deal. But this can be very efficient with systems that get into high load, and you have database tables in the hundreds of millions or in the billions. This is a much more efficient way to do things and prevent, query blocking time. And of course, you should obviously have indexes and stuff, but this is a great way to like leverage indexes as well, and just do things kind of in a more scalable way. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on, is doing stuff in a scalable way, building a Symfony API. We're going to we're going to start pretty basic and go through stuff, step by step, and just kind of showing how easy it really is to do this. And I can't believe how many companies and how many people, mess all this up. Like, you just kind of follow the docs and you change stuff how you need it. But if you do it right, it's very simple. So this is assuming that we have PHP 8.2 installed, and Composer installed, and Symfony CLI installed. Also, you're probably gonna have to bear with me a little because I only got one hand, so typing is going to be a little bit harder. But you know, as long as you have those things installed on your machine, if you're using Mac, you can use Brew or Ubuntu. You should have PHP installed already, and you just have to get Composer. But we're going to make a new project, so we're just going to do Symfony new, and this API, I'm going to make it like a planets API, planets, stars, solar systems, things like that. Just kind of an easy way to go through some things. We're going to have to get into relationships at one point. I think that is something that gets, messed up a lot, is that people return these huge nested objects in their APIs, and you can get into trouble with like circular relationships and stuff like that. So we are going to avoid that. Um, and we're going to install a bunch of stuff here, and then we're going to get into CQRS in the uh, next video. But we're going to get everything we need to do this. So the first thing we definitely need, we open our project up real quick. Yes, trust. If we look at Composer, we don't have when you do install like a Symfony or create a Symfony API project, just the base framework, it is missing a lot of stuff, which is good. That's good. We get to choose what we want. We need a doctrine. So that's the first thing. And the cool thing is we get to just pick and choose the things that we want. And we're going to want both of these. We want the orm-pack, and we're going to want the maker bundle to help make us entities. And I'll go ahead and like copy and paste these in the comments of this video. Um, cool. The other thing we're going to want is security. We're going to need this for auth and some other things. We're not gonna do auth to start with, though. We're gonna kind of build this out and then go back to security a little bit later. We're probably also going to want to deal with the serializer at some point when we get into serializing those relationships. And what else do we need? We need the validator, and that is for DTO, which if you're not familiar with, I would definitely recommend checking out how to use Symfony DTO. It's super easy, it's super awesome. It just basically makes, it stands for data transfer object. It turns the request object into a typed data object that we can then go ahead and use. So I think we've got everything we need. Controller, entity, repository, blah, 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 all this stuff. Cool. It's just taking PHP Storm a while to index all this. Okay. Next time, we're going to get into actually building out this whole pattern. But just to kind of, go over a few quick things. Basically, what you normally have is where our first entity is going to be called planets. So typically, you have controllers that are namespaced, which is what we're going to have. We're going to have a planets controller, and this is going to extend abstract controller, declare strict types, yes. Now, you write a function, if that's your controller function, and this is, we'll just do like, this is going to be a post, create planet, and then we're going to have our route annotation, our route attribute, sorry. And then we're going to have path, which is going to be like planets. Then we're going to have a name, which is just going to be create planet. I always name them the same thing as the function. And then next we're going to have methods, which you don't have to put methods, that's optional, but that's definitely what I would say when you're creating an API like this is you want to restrict, this is post planets. This is how you make post planets. If you're using like Slim Factory or like the Laravel router or things like that, this is kind of already done with those route groups that you're telling it what method to do. Symfony does routing differently. You can also set it up in config, but this is how we are restricting, that in making this the post planet route. Now, what Symfony wants you to do and what we're going to do is this is the controller to service layer that we're going to build. Controllers are only going to interact with services, and then services are going to interact with a bunch of stuff, repositories, other services, other external APIs. They're going to do everything you need. But there should be like no entity manager stuff in the controller. And honestly, there shouldn't be any entity manager stuff in a service either. The service just uses the repositories when it needs to do entity stuff. And that's really what we're going to be getting into with CQRS, because it doesn't matter if you use CRUD or not, it's the repository, where things are going to be different. So for service, we're going to have oh, we need to make our directory first, planet directory, and this is going to be, just going to call it the planet's service. Wow, I can't, or just planet service. I like that better, not plural. Okay. This is going to be final read only, and when the time comes, we're going to have our our planet repository in here. This is how I like to set up constructors. There we go. And then because of auto wiring, which is dependency injection, then we just call planet service here. And then, we're going to have like, for this, obviously, it's going to be like create planet. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take our DTO, pass it in here, create a planet. It's going to return the created planet from the repository, and which we haven't even made this. This stuff doesn't exist, but you get the idea. We're going to return the planet, and we're going to return a JSON response, which is going to have the planet, and it's going to be a 201 status created. Cool, there you go, too easy. That is post, and next time when we wire up DTO, you're gonna see how easy. There's literally one step that we're gonna do to make this create a planet, other than making the entity in the repository, but it's super easy. This is the pattern that should be followed, and it's like, okay, there's no error handling in here. There's no, checking of anything. We're not dealing with the request object. It's like, yeah, we're not, because DTO is gonna handle all that stuff for us. It'll make it super easy, and the repository is then going to do its magic. And when we go and update the planet that we make, that's where CQRS is going to take over, and we're going to get a ton of efficiency. So look for the next video to come out pretty soon, and we'll really get moving with this whole Symfony pattern of controller, service, repository, and you can do whatever you want in there, but there's no reason to deviate from it. It's just a few lines of code, and you basically have a working API.